welcome to Let Them Talk. I'm Paul DiRienzo.
And I'm Miss Joan Marie Musi.
And our guest is the famous and incomparable Penny Arcade.
Hi, everybody out there.
All right,
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
All right.
I have a cold.
Oh,
this is a cure.
Yeah, exactly.
Television is the cure for the common cold.
You can't believe it. 5 minutes ago,
I was a wreck. I couldn't even lift my head. But now I'm like, getting that.
Doing just fine.
That electricity, that edge, that communicative spirit.
By the way, we are live tonight, and you can see the number on your screen. So in a few moments, we'll be taking calls. And if you've had anything you've ever wanted to ask the Penny Arcade, this is your opportunity to do it.
Yeah, call us up.
Yeah, the Penny Arcade. It's like I'm that 8-ball where you press. I spent my childhood
give answers.
I love
pressing that. That was the best.
That was a great one.
Now, of course, we're here tonight because you've published a book, and it's very exciting.
It is exciting.
Bad
Semiotext.
reputation. Yeah.
Semiotext and MIT Press have published this beautiful hardcover artifact. It's an artifact.
Filled with photographs as well as the text.
With high-quality reproductions of archival photos of my work going all the way back to 1968. So it's kind of a historical document as well, with 3 of my scripts. Bitch, Dyke, Fag, Hag, Whore, my Sex and Censorship show, which was a commercial mainstream hit in 23 cities around the world, ran in New York for 1 year, and of course the sign is still hanging over the old village gate. It's landmarked. They can never take it down. Penny Arcade, sex, politics, reality. And then La Miseria, which is my play within a performance piece about growing up as a girl in a working class Southern Italian immigrant family in America. No mafia. Imagine 100%, almost, 98% mafia-free story.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. There you go. Not every Italian's in the mafia.
Yeah, and then Bad Reputation, which is the title play, which is my all-girl revenge show with a few fags who can't believe they can't have their own dance number, in which the very delightful, charismatic, and great actress, Miss Joan Marie Musi, played several roles. Not one role, but several roles. Stealing the show over and over, over and over.
Let me show the cover a little closer so folks can see it. This is the book, and
there's also essays by other people about your work, which is so interesting.
It is. The essays are very interesting. The introductory essay is by Kenneth Bernard, the great Kenneth Bernard, playwright, poet, and theater critic, who's a real scholar. Not this shabby kind of academia that we're mostly, unfortunately, having to float around in these days, or as I like to say, most academics are like small-time drug dealers. They just deal enough to pay for their own stash. This is, Kenneth Bernard is a great scholar.
A real intellectual.
Unbelievable. And his essay on the work is so amazing. And I was in his plays as a very young girl when I was 18. The first play I ever did with the Playhouse of the Ridiculous was a play of Ken Bernard's called The Moke Eater, which was one of the scariest plays. And for anybody who thinks that the 60s were peace, love, and understanding, they need to read Ken Bernard's work, which is poetic and really grapples, with some of the harder elements of what it is to be human. And so it's very exciting
to have him do the overall introduction.
Right. And he wouldn't write it just because he knew me when I was a teenager. So it's very interesting because I think that you, Joni, who know me so well, one of the things that he points out in his essay is Penny Arcade is a reformer. Which was really interesting because I never knew how to talk about this element in my work, which isn't, I don't really believe you can change the world. I just believe you can change the world around you.
And around other people sometimes, even unknowingly.
Yeah.
In
but
an audience.
Just that's enough. If you can just change the world around you, and if everybody took that responsibility to just change the world around themselves, evolution might be more possible. So I thought it was really fascinating that he saw me as a reformer, and he understood that I offer myself up as self-sacrifice in all my work, which is something I've understood for a long time. Then there's another essay, Before La Miseria, by the great Sarah Schulman.
Oh, and I love her writing, and I've read all of her books before.
Sarah Schulman, the great writer, author, and also playwright. And she writes about La Miseria, which is about Italian-American working class attitudes and mores clashing in the age of AIDS. And it's quite an interesting show. I did it in 1991 at PS 122 at the height of the PC movement. And here's this huge Italian family on Easter Sunday, and all the conversations with the family are racist and homophobic. And it never stops. And after the first night of the show, Mark Russell, who ran PS 122, came to me really nervous, and he said, "Penny," he said, the scenes with the family, they're so racist. And I said, "Yeah, Mark, that's how Italians are. They're very racist." He goes, "But aren't you afraid that the audience is going to think you're racist?" And I said, "No." I said, "I don't think if I show racism, people are going to think that I'm racist." And on top of this, I was one of the few, and I remain one of the few downtown artists who has a very diverse audience. I don't have, my work is not for the same 300 art school cripples who go to everything. My audience is across economic strata and class and
across age and
across ethnicity and race. And so then he said the words that I could never believe that I would ever hear. He said, "Well, Penny, couldn't you give us a taste of the racism?" And I thought, wow, and I sympathize, I think, at this point.
The fear of controversy.
A little bit pregnant as well?
Yeah, but I think that you're talking 1991, height of PC, height of the fake multiculturalism, what I call the new multiculturalism, the one that excludes white people, right? And very few people understand that until 1978, minority in this country meant Jewish or Italian. Blacks and Hispanics weren't even on the minority
list.
On the list, And as a immigrant working class girl, we called other people white people. I did not grow up considering myself white. I didn't have that privilege. And until I went blonde, which was only imagine to get...
It's not natural?
Well, no, but imagine to get to the age of 55 and then go blonde and suddenly not get followed around in supermarkets. Suddenly have people at banks treat you nicely. Because with dark hair, I was very, very ethnic looking. I was very Latina looking, as you can find out by looking in this book. Let's show them. Whoops.
Oh, yes. We'll get
Those are my NYU notes. I taught at NYU today, but here you can show them.
Gorgeous pictures.
Okay.
You can go forward and show them.
And I also wanted to finish about Sarah Schulman's thing, because she went right to the heart of that issue in her introduction, and I think did an amazing job confronting it, analyzing it, a really critical eye about the whole thing.
And she had that same critical eye. Okay, come back, Paul. I'll show you another picture. Yes. Sarah Schulman. Now you have to remember, Sarah Schulman is a lesbian and an activist, and on many levels, one would have expected. Here's a good one.
Yeah, that's a great picture.
Would have expected her to have a more PC attitude, at least in 1991, which Sarah never had. Sarah was always a very, very big champion of La Miseria, and has always championed my work, which is very interesting, because we were talking today, but maybe I should get to that. I'll finish talking about the book first. I just got some really big, over over-the-counter press with the New Yorker.
Oh, yeah, New Yorker magazine.
Writing about this book in this week's issue. And that's a big deal for me because I think I've artificially been kept underground for many, many years. But it was interesting.
Why do you think that was?
I think it has to do with a few different issues. I think one, because I didn't fit into any category. I wasn't black, I wasn't Latina, I wasn't a lesbian. If I had been any of those things,
in that period,
in the big multicultural blah 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 minority promotion, they would have done it. The other thing is the same thing that made me leave my family when I was 13 years old. You know, they don't think that people like me should speak. My family didn't think I should speak, you know, and
why was that?
Well, you know,
first of all, you're a girl.
First of all, I'm a girl, you know, but I think that in the downtown art scene, the fact that I come out of a working class and street, because, you know, I ran away when I was 13. I got caught after 6 weeks. I got put in reform school. I got out of reform school when I was 16. I went home for about, whatever it was, 2.5, 3 months, you know, couldn't be at home because it was just too difficult for me to be there. And then, you know, one night ran off with a bunch of queens in a car to Provincetown and then ended up on the streets of New York in the underclass, in the junky, you know, street scene. I was homeless, you know, for probably close to a year living.
So you didn't go to college and study?
Right. And I'm not middle class. And downtown, as in the 60s, the downtown scene really was an entrepreneurial everybody was from the working class. H.M. Koutoukis has just died, the great playwright and great poet and thinker, has just died on Saturday. As a matter of fact, on Thursday at Judson Memorial Church at 7 p.m. there's a wake for him. He was from a working class background in Endicott, New York. Jack Smith, you know, was coming from Texas and from the Midwest, trailer trash. John Vaccaro was coming from Steubenville, Ohio. Warhol, while he did go to Carnegie Mellon, was from a factory town. The 60s were really kind of fomented on the first generations of people that did not go into the factories from their families. So it was a kind of anything goes, wild experimentation. In the 70s, people started to go to art school. And then everybody, you know, everybody who was in art school in the 70s was reading the Soho News, they were reading the Village Voice. They were coming to New York already with an idea of who the art stars were. And they were coming, you know, they were going to art school because the Talking Heads went to the art school, you know, went to RISD.
So you were a rebel in your family. You were not. Your artistic expression was not appreciated. You were saying,
no, I was
why did you get married and get a job already?
I was pre that. I was a criminal. My father was seen as being. I was told my entire childhood that my father had been put in the state mental hospital for being criminally insane, and that he was going to drown me when I was 4, and that's why they put him in the state mental hospital. This was not a buried memory, okay? You can't have a buried memory in a Southern Italian family. They won't let you.
That parents who fail their children in that way is all too common.
Well, I mean,
in the poor classes.
Well, you know, the thing is that my family were displaced people, so I was displaced. I was very, very bright. It was the 50s in America, which meant that I was designated as college material when I was in kindergarten. I read at a 5th grade level in 2nd grade, but none of these things could I bring home, nor could I bring, like I say in La Miseria, I would, you know, go home, open the door and skip 6 centuries, and it was medieval Italy and I was a serf. Mm-hmm. So I think that fundamentally...
You were the black sheep of your family.
Absolutely, but when I returned to New York in the 80s, that's what I'm trying to get to, the downtown art scene had really been taken over by middle-class mores. It was no longer a place where, you know, where the larger-than-life monsters, Jack Smith, Harry Koutoukis, Charles Ludlam, all of these kinds of people, while they're quite celebrated right now, nobody would have been able to tolerate these people and their behavior for 5 minutes. You know what I mean?
In respectable society.
In respectable society.
Most of the people who go to art school come and hang out in the village and hang out in various restaurants and spend big money on their coffee and donuts to make like they're one of these people, would actually, if they were at a table with one of them, walk off in an insulted rage by things they would say to them.
Absolutely. But I mean, I think part of it, you know, to give a sense of hope, you know, to people, which I don't believe in hope. Hope's a killer. But, you know, a sense of faith.
By the way, this is Let Them Talk. I'm Paul DiRienzo with Miss Jo Marie Musi, and our guest is the incomparable Penny Arcade. We are here live. Our number's on the screen. It is 212-757-1538. If you have a question for Penny, feel free to call in. I know a number of her friends are with us and can call in, and we'll be happy to take your calls. So anyway, go ahead.
So what
Penny's talking about her book, by the way, and let's give your book another
plug. Bad Reputation by Semiotext, hardcover.
I'll show people what it looks like.
This book is an artifact, and get this, it's $20. I can assure you, what's happening? Why am I whispering? Why did he go shh?
Because of the nonprofit aspect.
Not for profit.
Yeah.
Okay, but what I can tell you, which is phenomenal, the big complaint about my work from downtown arts administrators has always been that I kept my ticket price really low, because I felt that, you know,
you want everybody to be able to come.
I want people to be able to come, and, well, you know, if the seats are empty, why not just let people in, you know? I get so amused when I go to the theater. I went to St. Anne's last week, and, you know, you're walking in with your ticket, and they're scrambling like this, you know, like, and I said, excuse me, are people trying to break into the theater? Shouldn't you be excited if people were trying to break into the theater? I mean, the level of tension around that is so strange. But what I wanted to point out, you know, about the current generations that are out here now is that we are all invariably tethered to the values of the generation we come of age in. And, you know, I have been reading and rereading Guy Debord, you know, Society of the Spectacle, and the level to which everything has been co-opted, the commodification of rebellion, that young people are actually falling for the idea that they are the generation with the ideas, you know, because we have always, in the world, depended on young people in their sense of idealism and their nose for the truth to change society. But once you corral this young group of people and get them into, production and get them into careerism, actually, the world out there is stealing your youth. They're stealing your youth, Your teens and 20s are the time for experimentation, right. And
it's your biggest opportunity for that. And
exactly.
You lose it with responsibilities, with obligations that come on with age. That
yes, exactly. As you get older, you lose it. So the one thing that young people always have, we were all also part of a youth culture in the 60s, right? And, they tried to tell us in the 60s that young people were it. I'll never forget Diana Vreeland in Vogue. Her statement in 1966 was, anybody who's anybody is a teenager. But we didn't believe it. We didn't fall for it, I remember reading that and going, huh? I was looking at people who were in their 40s and 50s that I knew who were really cool, who had apartments.
And who would have been born in 1910 and 1915. Yeah,
exactly. And people because youth is a quality that has nothing to do with age. And I do say always that the 60s were fought on the back of 15-year-olds, but the people who were really bringing the content, etc., were over 30. And that was the big joke about never trust anybody over 30, because they were all over 30.
The people under 30 were consuming the product made by people over 30.
Right, exactly.
And they were making it popular. And in a way, that was a great thing, because in the 50s, it was hard to find a market.
Yeah.
For progressive thinking. I mean,
right.
It just went nowhere.
Right.
It was just written and went into a library, and nobody ever saw it.
Absolutely.
All of a sudden, there was interest in it.
So, I mean, this is the thing, with young people right now, is that they don't have, they're not being supported in the arc of development. Because no matter what you do, you're better at it 20 years later. There's no two ways around it. So, to get back to my book, the other essay in the book is by Steve Zettner, who's my long-term collaborator, 18 years of working together. And that's a very interesting essay from the point of view of somebody who had to get used to the fact that I wasn't socialized. And that's the reason why I wasn't supported within the downtown art scene of the 80s, which was a largely polite middle-class scene. A lot of the people were, look, I have no ties to the middle class. My ties are to the working class, the underclass, read criminal class, and to the upper class. Because the upper class, has always...
It's just so comfortable.
Well, the upper class has always had a lot more room for, eccentricity, etc. So my lack of socialization, which in the 60s was not a problem, Steve talks about it to a great degree in this book, which I think is so interesting. And one of the things that's wonderful is that over an 18-year period, as he says in this essay, he came to see that it was a tiny miracle that I hadn't been socialized. Or I could have never written this work, because I'm like anybody else. I want to be liked. It's not like Tom Murrin, the alien comic, who just did a show of his own at PS 122, was being interviewed by Steve about me. Oh, by the way, my show is on MNN2 on Wednesdays at 11 o'clock.
Right.
Steve and I have Stemming the Tide of Cultural Amnesia. It's the LES Bio documentary series. He was interviewing Tom Murrin, the alien comic.
That's Wednesday night at 11 p.m.?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And do you know
Here
what channel
on
that's on?
Channel 34, Time Warner 112 or 12, RCN.
Okay, well, people can find it.
You can find it.
Yeah.
It's on at 11 p.m. on Wednesdays. At any rate, Steve was interviewing, after we interviewed Tom about himself and his work, I went out of the building while Steve interviewed him about me, because I had worked with Tom when I was a teenager. And I came back and they were still talking, and I heard Tom Murrin saying, well, the thing about Penny Arcade is you're in the audience, there's 300 people there, and you all feel she's talking directly to you. And Penny Arcade doesn't care what anybody thinks of anything she says. She just tells her truth. And I'm standing in the back, and I was thinking, that's not true. I care very much what people think of me, but I have to tell the truth anyways.
Yeah.
And so it's at great cost to me. I mean, I would like everybody to like me, and I would have loved to, have...
Was it difficult? I've seen some of your shows, and you get very personal in your shows, and I mean, that's the kicker in your show. I won't say what it is, but when folks see, at least the one I saw, and they watch it to the very end, and you hear the kicker, it's a very personal moment. Do you have ever had any problems, like saying what happened to you in that experience?
Yes.
And in front of thousands of people?
No. So what happens in my work is I've had a lot of trauma in my life, ever since I was a very small child, and there's a lot of shame, just a tremendous amount of shame. And then that shame was coupled with being told to not express myself, which comes from being poor, it comes from being peasant, it comes from being working class. And the big breakthrough for me was being taken in by gay men, because the opposite, the gay men wanted me, to live in my imagination. They loved it that I was very outspoken, etc. And so what's happened in the course of my own, I make transformational work. But I'm not there to transform the audience. I'm there to transform me. But the thing is, because as humans, we have empathy. And we have compassion, and that is what sets us aside from our brothers and sisters, the animals.
This is sort of developing into our International Women's Day show. Yesterday, March 8th is International Women's Day. Today's the 9th. We're here live. So
we're 1 minute away. Yeah. 1 minute away of ending.
Right. So tell us a little bit. We have a couple minutes.
Well, I want to say the third essay in the book is by Stephen Bottoms from Leeds, UK, who is an expert on 1960s experimental theater in New York. So he is the perfect person to write about me because, of course, I grew up and came of age as a teenager doing that theater. And then there's 3 of my plays, La Miseria, Bitch Dyke Fag Hag Whore, and Bad Reputation. And as we said, lots and lots and lots of pictures.
Now, Penny, at the end, let's talk a little bit about the people who work for you.
Yeah.
Because your shows are a spectacle,
right,
and have pageantry, and a lot of people are involved, not only on stage with
but
you,
behind
but in the process. So let's talk a little bit about them.
Steve Zentner, as I brought up, is a wonderful video producer. I met him, in 1992, and he also acts as my dramaturg, set designer, sound designer. I have a lot of people shooting live video. There's a lot of live video on my show. Dean Lance, Ricky Youngers, and a variety of other people have worked as dramaturgs. Eric Wallach, in the past Chris Rail has worked on my work.
And then you've got your production crew like Kenny Davis and Laurie Side.
Well, Kenny Davis has been very important for many years. David Pace was very important for many years. And there were certain performers who were very important, like Jennifer Bell, James Ferguson, Kenny Davis, people who have a long history in my work. And, of course, this book is a celebration of all of them as well.
1 minute. In the last minute, what would you like to leave the audience with?
Well, I just want to remind everybody that your individuality and your uniqueness is the only thing you have to offer the world, no matter who you are. There's no reason why I became the artist that I became. Nobody would have picked me out as that. Get the book. There's so much in there that's not just, Steve Zentner, my collaborator, always says Penny Arcade holds herself up as a laboratory of what's possible. So, all of you listening, all of you that are out there, you have something that can only come into the world through you.
Thank you, Penny Arcade, for joining us on Let Them Talk.
Yay.
It was a wonderful show.
Thank you.
Thanks for
your book. Congratulations on your book. It's really beautiful and
Thank
definitely something everybody's going to want to see.
It's an artifact.
I will be seeing you next week here on Let Them Talk, 8 o'clock Tuesdays.